Well, after everything revealed last week, a few loose ends are tied up, and a new story begins that takes us in an even darker direction for the next season. Hey guys, remember the season finale of Riverdale, Season 1, Episode 13, Chapter 13, The Sweets Hereafter, and I was definitely really interested in this episode, to say the least. I didn't really know what we were going to get here, because as we know, pretty much everything was revealed last week, and especially after, how things wrapped up, I really did not know what this finale was going to be, and I have to say that while I didn't think this was the best episode we've had of the show, this still was a pretty damn good finale. I really did love this episode overall. A lot of this episode was just tying up loose ends and very much setting things up for the next season, and especially the way we left things off. I am very intrigued to see where we go next season, but let's just get into this episode because I definitely do want to get into it. And we start off right where last episode left off. We see Jughead, he's typing the computer at Pops, and he's explaining the cliffhanger from the last episode, that Clifford's maple syrup business was a front. He really did track heroin, and I like the way they did explain that. So if anyone, who was confused or didn't really understand it, very quickly they say he did in fact track heroin, and, basically he did obviously kill himself, and Allison types in the computer at the blue and gold, and we actually hear her viewpoint in the story. She wonders if Jason had found out about the drug business and threatened to go public about it, and because obviously there was a reason why Clifford killed him, and no one's really going to know what that motive is, but Alice and Jughead both cover the narrative that Clifford hired Mustang to kidnap Jason, then killed Mustang and staged his suicide to cover his tracks and implicate Hiram, and Jughead then reiterates that Clifford threatened FP as well. So this is basically the entire story we now know, and I like that they very quickly got that out of the way. The rest of this episode is kind of just like tying up loose ends, and we see Mayor McCoy. She's seen yelling at Sheriff Keller. Apparently Clifford's suicide revealed some dark secrets around the town, and Mayor McCoy wants all the corruption in Riverdale to just go away. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen. I mean, there are serpents out there. There are obviously people tied to Jason's murder. It's just not going to go away. That's not how this is going to go. But Jughead is unsure if it will. I mean, obviously, it's not going to go that way. I mean, I think they truthfully do want all of this darkness to end, but I just don't think that's going to happen after everything we've seen. So Keller then meets with FP and Jughead. He says that Clifford's drug trade had a pretty far reach, but that he and Mayor McCoy want to stop the drug trafficking within Riverdale, and Keller believes that the Serpents have a hand in it and asks FP to give names in exchange for a lighter sentence, and FP believes that the Serpents wouldn't get involved in heavy drugs, and they wouldn't rat anyone out anyway, so Keller actually threatens FP, saying that he'll face a minimum of 20 years in jail if he doesn't end up helping them out. So he basically has no choice. He needs to assist them in this, and I do like that FP is still, while he's in jail, still doing whatever he can to help them out here. I thought that was definitely really good to see, and, you really are caring for FP. He really didn't have to do what he did, but because of how much he loves his son, he is doing his time, even if he is not responsible for any of what he did. I think that was definitely very interesting to see, and I really do like the way that FP is still trying to help them out here. So Archie then finds Fred upset about something. They talk about Clifford, actually, and Archie says that the trouble isn't over for his friends, and Fred reassures that everyone in Riverdale still has trouble to deal with, and, I mean, that's an understatement, honestly. There is still a lot going on here. We see Hermione's repairing the house for Hiram's arrival at the end of the month, and I was wrong. We didn't see Hiram in this episode. I thought we were going to get him here, but no, we just hear about his anticipating, arrival, and I think that was mainly because Mark Consuelos just got casted, and obviously they wrapped up this season a while ago, so they're not just going to, do some random scene with him now. That wouldn't really make a lot of sense to do that, so I get it. They're prolonging his wait till season 2, but they did a really great job at anticipating his arrival here. I thought it was definitely very well done, and Veronica then makes a remark about Hiram's return, and, she's not really happy that he's returning and everything like that, because as we know, they were trying to get away from it all. Like, Hermione was at the point where she tried to escape, but Veronica stopped her from doing that, and, now she's just, not exactly happy that he's coming back, but Alice makes pancakes for the Cooper family. Betty's very suspicious, digging her fingernails into her hand, and Betty is really the only person in this family who is done with secrets. Like, she is tired of living in a lie. She really just wants the truth to come out, and that's something I've loved about Betty all season, is just how truthful she really is and how much she cares about what actually happened, and that's something that Alice has kind of, sheltered her from. Now, yeah, obviously, it was kind of a good thing, but now that Betty knows, obviously, she wants to know more of what's going on, and it's understandable why. I mean, after a secret like that, obviously you want to know more of what's going on. So it's understandable why Betty is so intent on finding out more here. But Betty and Archie then walk to school. Betty reveals her family is acting like everything is normal, and she'd rather they address their problems instead, because obviously that's not the case. Things are not completely normal here, and before things get worse again, obviously, because things are going to get worse, and I thought that was definitely smart of her to, to think that, obviously, because they should just address their problems. Obviously, there is a lot that, they're keeping from her, and she just wants them to just admit it, stop hiding it. This is their family. They shouldn't have to admit, keep this stuff from each other anymore. So in the hallway, Veronica tells Archie that the two of them need to tell Betty about their kiss, and Archie agrees, but that he says their last conversation with Betty about that subject, it didn't really go very well. As we know, Betty did have a crush on Archie in the beginning of the season. It was pretty big. For a while, it seemed like those two were possibly going to get together, but Archie, as we know, has in fact started this relationship with Veronica, and they seem to be official at this point. Like, they actually are going out, and I didn't know if they were actually going to get them together, but I like this. I like that these two are together. Veronica actually volunteers to tell her, so Archie and Betty are called to the principal's office, and Mayor McCoy offers that they both be featured at the town Jubilee for their work helping solve Jason's murder, and they ask why Jughead can't be included. Basically, it turns out she wants Archie to perform a song with Josie and the Pussycats because she knows how great he is and how well that worked out the last time, and Betty wants to make a speech about Jason. She wants her down there so she can maybe give a speech, but Mayor McCoy says it would send the wrong kind of message, even though FP is not the murderer, obviously, of Jason. He is still tied and he is still in jail, and Jughead doesn't exactly have the best rep. And again, Jughead, he's just going through a lot of shit here, and because of what he's tied to, it's obviously not a good idea to do that. And that's a big theme of this episode, of how everyone is very much trying to distance themselves away from Jughead, and Betty is really the only person who is willing to stand up for him, and I really did like seeing that here. So at lunch, Betty tells Jughead that she declined Mayor McCoy's invitation, which was honestly really smart of her. I like that she did that, unless Jughead could also be featured. She's not going to go if Jughead can't be there. I mean, it just seems wrong. And Jughead said it's okay since he doesn't really like the Jubilee anyway, and he updates Archie, Bay, Veronica, and Kevin on the latest about FP. Bay decides that she will write an article for the Register about Mayor McCoy, focusing on the Serpents instead of Clifford's guilt, because the Serpents is really the problem here. That's what caused a lot of the crime within the town. As we know, Mayor McCoy wants that crime to end. Well, the Serpents is really the reason why that crime continues to linger on. As long as the Serpents are around, this crime is going to continue for decades. I mean, that's just how it's going to go. The Serpents have been around basically as long as the town has. It's really only till now that the Serpents are really starting to get involved in things like that. So Veronica and Archie tell Betty the truth about their relationship, and I like that they were honest with her, and she's actually completely fine with it. She's happy for them, and I really did like seeing this. This plotline was just a little bit annoying just because of how repetitive things get. I'll get into that in a second, but you understand why Betty's okay with it. I thought it was definitely well done overall, and it really to show how forward Betty has gone as a character. Again, she was in love with Archie in the beginning of the season, and now she is completely okay with it, which I don't know if I exactly believe. Again, she had that love for Archie, and the fact that she's with Jughead now, and they're as close as they are, I don't know if I exactly believe that relationship, but it works for this episode, and I thought overall that was definitely well done. But Penelope and Cheryl then talk about Clifford's burial, and Penelope says that the Blossom family has been cursed forever, saying ever since the murder between Clifford and Hal's grandfathers, it's basically they've been cursed. So Penelope wonders which member of the Blossom family will die next, and I love how blunt she is. Like, it could be either of them, and I thought the show was setting up Cheryl's death. It just seemed like it was imminent. The way that they kept teasing that, oh, someone else is going to die in the Blossom family, or oh, the Blossom family still is cursed. I just thought they were setting up her death throughout this episode. And there's one scene in particular where I was very surprised that was not the case. So we'll get into that in a second. But Cheryl begins to cry. She looks at the rafters of the barn, and she doesn't really know what to do now. I mean, obviously she knows that her father is a murderer, and he murdered her own brother. It's very hard to go on after that, and we see a very different side of Cheryl than we've seen throughout the rest of the season. That's something I definitely did like seeing here. So Archie then double checks that Betty's okay with his and Veronica's relationship. She says that she is, and Archie says he's happy with Veronica, but he begins to say that part of him, he always wondered about him and Betty. He always thought they kind of did have a future together, and Betty does cut him off, saying how happy the four of them are now, and that, she is Jughead, he is Veronica, and this plotline I just didn't exactly buy, honestly. I did not buy that Betty would be that happy with Archie and Veronica. I mean, obviously, yes, she wants Archie and Veronica to be happy, she has a great friendship with Veronica, and she's in a really good place with Archie, but I just didn't believe she'd be this happy about it, and that she'd be okay with it as she is. I mean, her and Jughead have not exactly been in a good place for the past 2 episodes. So I just was a little bit taken aback by the way that Betty was. And the fact that she really wasn't taken aback by the way things were between them. I get it, obviously, because she's known that these two have definitely had feelings for each other for a while, but the fact that she was so okay, and Archie and Veronica didn't really buy it, the storyline just was not as interesting as the show made it out to be. I think the couples on the show are kind of the weakest part, at least for this season, definitely. I think Betty and Jughead have worked, but Archie and Veronica seems so rushed, it just seems very abrupt, and that's the thing with this episode, is that's something with CW couples in general, is that they always end up very abrupt, and this episode is definitely not the case, and definitely not different. I think that both the relationships were very much rushed, and this episode very much shows that. So Fred asks Hermione why he has new crew members at his company, and Hermione reveals that she actually fired the Serpents, that she doesn't want to be tied to them anymore, because it does hurt the Lodge's family image to be associated with the Serpents. Obviously, as the Serpents are now tied to Jason's murder, it makes them look even worse, and Fred says that they're partners, and he's hurt that she made a decision without him, but Fred reveals that she and Hiram were offering to buy Fred out of his company, which was a very smart idea, obviously, because Hiram would not want Fred involved, and he says he'll consider it with an official offer in writing, and it makes sense why they want to do that. It would be a good position for him, it'd be better for her and Hiram, and I thought that was definitely very well set up here. So Archie then brings his newest song about what he and his friends have been through to Josie, and she says that she likes it now. And yeah, Josie's in this episode. Again, Josie's a character that I feel has been completely underused this entire season. She's been billed as a main character, but she's only really been about 4 or 5 episodes, and she's really only had a major plot line in about 3 of them, and I don't really think the show has ever used her that well. They had that one episode with her where we really did develop her as a character, but we haven't really gone anywhere with it since, and in general, I feel like Josie's a character that really has only been on the show because they need Josie and the Pussycats, and that they need some sort of musical act, and I was hoping that that's not the direction the show would take, but this season, at least, it seems like that's what they've done with this character, and it sucks, too, because I do think they could do a lot more with her. I mean, her mother is the fucking mayor of all things, so definitely they could do more with her, but they just don't seem to want to do anything there. So she says she likes it, but they can't sing it at the Jubilee because Mayor McCoy already approved their songs, and because of that, it's not going to work out. So Betty shows Allison Hal her piece on the Serpents, and Allison comments it, but says that she can't publish it because Betty seems just too close to the case. And Allison Hal then explained that these have been an increasing crime against the Serpents, and they don't want Betty to become aligned with them. And it made sense, obviously. I mean, the Serpents are a very dangerous group right now, and obviously they want Betty to stay as far away from that as possible. So Veronica meets with Cheryl in the locker room. I thought this was definitely one of the strongest scenes of the episode, where Cheryl reveals that she has resigned as captain of the River Vixen. She's done, and to me, it seemed like Cheryl just doesn't really know what to do with her life anymore. Like, she's just willing to go on and not really knowing what to do at this point. So Veronica can take over in her place. She says her father's death has put things in perspective, and Veronica asks how she can help, and Cheryl says that she's fine. She's done shedding tears for the men of the Blossom family because, I mean, she's really the only one in her family who does want to move on. Penelope is still trying to cling on to, what's happened. She's trying to keep this secret from her. Obviously, she's done with this family. And again, at this point, I really did think they were setting up Cheryl's death. It just seemed like that's where they were headed with her, and I'll get more into that. But Veronica tells Betty about what happened with Cheryl. They both agree that something weird is happening within the town. They don't exactly know what it's all about. And Veronica comments Betty on her article about the Serpents. She reveals she's already posted it on the Blue and Gold's websites, obviously against the discretion of her mother. As we know, Alice was against it. But Veronica then asks Betty if she's really okay with her relationship with Archie, and she says that she is. And again, Veronica, she says she's okay. I don't understand why they have to keep clarifying that she's okay. Obviously, she did acknowledge that she was fine with it. Why did they have to keep asking her over and over again? This part of the episode just kind of bothered me. Again, I just didn't really believe that Betty would be that okay with Archie and Veronica. I thought they would have more of a conversation here, but they just didn't. And I kind of wanted to hear more between Betty and Veronica, and especially this episode, I feel their friendship was honestly kind of wasted. Their friendship has been probably the highlight of this entire season. I love what they've done with Betty and Veronica here, and I don't think they had enough of them in this episode. I genuinely think they didn't. This scene was kind of cut short. I think they could have focused a lot more on them, and this scene in general, I just didn't really feel they did as much of them as they could have, and that, like I said, is one of my problems with the episode. There's a lot of greats in this episode, but a lot of it is cut short, and I do think if it was a little bit more lengthy, then they could have definitely had a lot more satisfaction here. So Polly then walks in, says she misses being a normal teenager in high school, and Betty suggests that now's the time that Polly comes back to high school. Now that they have Jason's murder done, there's really no reason for Polly to be at the Blossoms, obviously, because she was there to solve the murder. Now she's back, and even if Alice and Hal don't know about it, it's fine, because she obviously wants to go back and have that normal life. So Archie and Jughead then arrive home. They're met with Fred and this woman who's actually Jughead's caseworker, and Archie asks if Jughead can still live with them, and Fred says that it's highly unlikely, both because of his income issues at work, as well as an old DUI on his record after he separated from Mary, which we found out about a couple episodes ago, and obviously Fred just does not have, enough to prove that he is capable of raising Jughead. There's too much crime and things like that he's been involved in, so it's obviously not a good idea for Jughead to continue living there. And the caseworker reveals that the family on the south side has offered to foster Jughead, but he'll have to transfer schools possibly by the end of the week. And Jughead isn't completely against the idea. We've seen before that Jughead just is not happy with the town. He wants to get out, and Archie arrives at the station, explains the situation to FP. He asks FP to take any sort of deal to help himself and Jughead, but FP says he won't betray the Serpents. Again, the Serpents threaten Jughead's life. He's obviously not going to betray them, and that they'll come to his aid when necessary. And he also says that Jughead is strong enough to get through this as long as he has his friends by his side. They have stuck with him throughout this entire thing, and as long as they continue to do that, they should be fine. So Veronica and Jughead then eat lunch together. She laments about how the two of them have a lot in common, and this scene was extremely well done. These two have really not shared a lot of screen time, just the two of them together, and I really did love how much she did compare them, because it really does make a lot of sense. They both have, aside from their dads being in legal trouble, Cheryl arrives at the table, and there definitely are a lot of similarities between these two. They both have pasts that very much do haunt them, that they're trying to move away from. They're both in positions where they both have ties to a criminal family, and they do have a bad rep, and they're trying to move away from that bad rep, and they're also kind of outnumbered in many ways. Veronica, in the way that she's handled the Serpents, it seems that Hermione kind of always gets, the last say, and Jughead, with the way things have gone with FP, he doesn't really have a choice there, and I thought this was just really well done. Again, you really don't see how similar these two really are, but I thought that was really well handled, actually. So Cheryl arrives at the table, apologizes to Jughead for slapping him. She gives Jughead her spider brooch, which he can pawn away for a lot of money, And Veronica asks Cheryl what's gotten into her. Why is Cheryl acting so nice all of a sudden? And Cheryl begins to tell her when Kevin comes in and says that there's a problem at Betty's locker. So Betty and Polly then stand at Betty's locker, which is plastered with copies of Betty's article, and also a derogatory message written in what looks like blood, which was just really creepy about. And Archie then tells Fred the message was actually written in pig's blood, and he's worried about Betty and Jughead's safety, obviously because of what's happened with, Betty obviously has a lot more ties to the Blossoms than she thought she did, and Jughead obviously with the Serpents. So Jughead tells Betty that she's going to continue being a target as long as she's with Jughead, and he says that there's a conspiracy within the town to ruin his life and make him feel like he doesn't belong. And Betty reminds him that he does, in fact, belong. And yeah, I would agree. He definitely does belong within Riverdale, and I really did think they were setting up here that Jughead was going to leave and that we weren't going to see Jughead in Riverdale next season. But again, we'll get into that. Veronica then arrives at home. Hermione asks about Veronica's growing relationship with Archie, asks her to convince Archie to get Fred to sell his company, and Veronica then questions why Hermione is wanting to screw Fred over, especially after all that she's done for, all Fred has done for her. Why is she wanting to fuck him over? And Hermione says it's because she doesn't think that Hiram and Fred would be able to get along. Remember, they are on opposite sides of the company. Hiram was working against Fred, and obviously they're not going to be able to patch things up that fast, and it did make sense why Hermione was looking at this in a very realistic way. This is one of the few times where I think Hermione has been in the right, and it made sense why she wanted Fred to opt out of this. So Bay then comes home to discover that Polly told Alice about Betty taking her to school, and Alice chastises Betty for publishing the article behind her back. Betty says because she's telling the truth, and Alice says it's only because she cares about Betty. And Betty begins asking Alice about her perception of Jughead and FP, including what FP said Alice and Hal were arguing about at homecoming. And Betty tells Alice not to keep any secrets that could hurt the family. And obviously she wants answers. I mean, she's just done with the secrets, and she wants Alice to come forth. So Cheryl then asks Penelope if she can stay home from school, but she says no. And again, at this point, I'm like, Cheryl is going to kill herself. Like, I genuinely thought that Cheryl was suicidal at this point, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, she stepped down as River Vixen, she's being nice to Jughead, she doesn't want to go to school, she doesn't really want anything to do with the family, she's kind of shutting herself out of everything. It just seemed like that's what she was trying to do, and Allison comes into Betty's room. She tells the truth that the fight between her and Hal at homecoming was because she just discovered that she was pregnant, it turns out, and she and Hal disagreed about how to handle it. So after the fight, she was sent to the Sisters of Quiet Mercy, who arranged for her baby to be adopted, and she apologized for keeping it from her, and they embraced. So yeah, Betty now has this secret brother that we didn't know about, and this is a very interesting reveal. I like that we now know what really was going on between Alice and Hal. We knew obviously something was going on between them, obviously because of how angry Hal got, and now it makes sense. Obviously they've now kept this baby from Betty, and I'm guessing we're going to meet this character next year. I don't know who the hell it's going to be, but there definitely is a brother. So Bay tells Archie and Veronica about her secret brother. She gets a call from Jughead, who is starting his first day at Southside High, and the three of them agree to find Jughead, which I didn't really understand this, honestly. I understand, obviously, they want to get Jughead back in school, but I think it's the right decision for Jughead to be at Southside High. I think it made a lot of sense for him to be there, because Riverdale is just, again, not really a place Jughead wants to be. Like, we know, obviously, he thinks Riverdale is just not a safe area anymore, and he wants to get as far away from it as possible. So, I get, obviously, why they wanted to save him, but I didn't think that was the direction we were going in. So Cheryl lays her white dress from the river out of her room. She lays down on her bed, and Archie, Betty, and Veronica then find Jughead in the Southside Cafe. He's having fun with the other students, and outside, Jughead tells Betty that him attending Southside might be better for everything, and Betty reassures that she won't let this break them apart. They hug while Archie and Veronica look on, and yeah, he actually is attending the school. We end this episode, and he actually is still attending Southside High, and I agree, it definitely is the right thing. Being in Riverdale is just not a good idea right now, and I like that Betty is willing to put up with that. So Archie begins to tell Veronica something, but she suddenly gets a text from Cheryl saying she's going to be with Jason now. So you know that Cheryl is probably going to kill herself, which makes a lot of sense. Again, everything that she's done her entire life has kind of been a lie, and Obviously, she feels like she doesn't really have a place in the family anymore, and she obviously wants to kill herself. So the gang looks for Cheryl at Sweetwater River. They find her trying to break the ice of the river, and Veronica is trying to talk her down, do what she can to try to get through to her, but she actually ends up falling in, and the four of them then hurry over, and Archie attempts to punch the ice to save her, and KJ Apa did such a great job in this scene, to the point where he actually did break his hand. Like, yeah, KJ Apa in real life, when you saw that blood, that was real. He actually did break his hand there, and luckily they are able to get her out of the water. We get the weirdest scene where Cheryl sees this zombified Jason and she screams. I don't know what the hell that was about. That scene made no sense to me whatsoever. Unfortunately, it's not talked about for the rest of the season, but I don't know if we're going to come back to that at some point, but that was really fucking weird, and I don't know what's going to happen there, but Archie breaks through the ice. He pulls Cheryl out. He revives her, carries her off to safety, and it was a very powerful moment, especially for Cheryl, who we know has been, I wouldn't say the villain of the season, but she hasn't exactly been associated as a good character, and I think this was really her redeemable moment. From here on out, things obviously have not gone well for Cheryl. They definitely want to help her turn things around, and definitely I thought this was a very poignant moment. I really thought the show was going to go in a depth direction with her, but I think it makes a lot of sense to keep her alive. So back to the lodge house, Veronica offers Cheryl hot chocolate. Hermione arrives and asks why Cheryl is there, and Veronica tells her that she was in an accident and she needed help, and Hermione tells Veronica to get ready for the Jubilee. So Cheryl is watching on, and we don't see a lot more Cheryl throughout this episode, which I guess makes a lot of sense, because again, she just doesn't really know what to do right now, but Betty gets ready for the Jubilee. Alice comes in, asks what's wrong, and Betty tells her about Jughead's situation, how she's worried that it will change too much between them, and Archie then attempts to practice his guitar with his bandaged hands. Veronica confronts him, then asks him about how he looked at Betty at Southside High, and Archie says it'll always like Betty as a friend, and that seeing Betty and Jughead together made him realize he wants to be there for Veronica. He likes the idea of Betty and Jughead together, and he really does love Veronica. So they kiss, but they're interrupted by Josie and the Pussycats, and Josie explains she's reconsidered whether or not to play Archie's song, and that's exactly what they do. Mayor McCoy welcomes everyone to the Jubilee. They play Archie's song, and once again, it was cut off, but we see Jughead. He visits FP, saying that Keller wants him to convince FP to name names, and Jughead tells FP he's going to be okay, that his foster family's nice, the high school seems normal enough, he's going to be just fine, and FP need not worry about him. So FP tells Jughead that he needs to answer for his wrongdoings, and after everything he's done, he just can't possibly, he needs to pay for what he did, because, yeah, FP was definitely on the wrong side of things, and he feels that he does need to pay, and I do agree, he does, and that he needs Jughead to be there for the rest of their family while FP goes through the trial, and it's sad. Again, I mean, you know that Jughead obviously does want FP to get out of jail, but that's just not how it's going to go. He's going to do what he needs to finish things off, and I like that we end the season with him still in jail. So Archie and the Pussycats then finish singing Archie's song. Archie shares a look with Betty, who's off stage, and Betty then begins her speech just as Jughead walks into the room, and in her speech she says that everyone in the town is the essence of Riverdale, even people they attempt to shun like FP and Jughead, and she says that Riverdale needs to do better to prevent something like Jason's murder from happening again, obviously because no one really tried to stop it. And she finishes her speech. Jughead then leads the audience into applause, and it was just a really powerful moment, knowing everything that Jughead's been through and knowing, where we've really been this season. This was a very satisfying moment overall. I was very happy to see this actually go well for Betty, and I thought that was definitely really well done. But we then see Hermione. She approaches Fred after the Jubilee, and he reveals he's not selling the company, but he is going to continue to keep Hermione as a partner. So he is definitely going to stay with the company. And he's going to have Hermione, but he will have to deal with Hiram, but I guess he'll deal with him as it comes. We'll have to see what happens there. But Archie, Veronica, Betty, and Jughead toast milkshakes to each other at Pops, and Penelope then arrives home. She's looking for Cheryl. She finds her standing over a fire, and she filled the house with gasoline. She's going to burn it to actually start over, and basically, they end up burning Thornhill, which is in flames, and I guess they're going to find a new home. I'm assuming it's going to be with the Coopers, because that's technically their actual family, but we'll have to see. I don't know really what's going to happen there, but Betty and Jughead then arrive in FP's trailer, and Betty tells Jughead she's not giving up on FP until he's out of jail, and Jughead tells Betty that he loves her, and Betty says the same, and they kiss. So I guess we're not doing the whole Jughead is asexual plot. I'm guessing we're moving away from that, and I was at first upset that they were doing that because I do think it's one of the more interesting elements of Jughead as a character. But for this show, it makes sense. It does make sense why we're going in that direction, why we're not going to have Jughead be asexual. He does, in fact, have Betty, who does care about him, and it makes sense why we're going in that direction. And Cole Sprouse has been so great as Jughead, and there's so many more interesting elements to him as a character this season that I'm honestly fine with them not doing that. I get why they want to do that, and I'm completely fine with that. So I wasn't too upset by that reveal. I think it would have been interesting if they did that, but for a show like this, I just don't think it would really make sense, and it made sense why Jughead told Betty that he really does love her. I thought overall it was a really satisfying moment. So Veronica and Archie arrive at the lodge house. They go into Veronica's room where they then have sex, and Jughead and Betty also begin getting undressed in FP's trailer, but they hear a knock at the door, and we get one of the most surprising moments of the episode where there are a bunch of serpents, including Hot Dog, and the serpents say that they will protect Jughead for FP, and they offer him a serpent's jacket, and he actually accepts, and you can see the look on Betty's face. She's very worried about what this really means for Jughead. Obviously, because he's tried to stay as far away from the Serpents as possible, but now that he has their support, I really feel Jughead's going to go in this more darker direction. As we know, he kind of likes shutting people out of his life, and I don't know if he's really going to go with the Serpents, but I kind of feel like that's the direction we're headed. So we'll have to see really the way that turns out. But the next day, Archie gets dressed. He explains that Fred wants to meet him at Pop's, which probably means something really serious. And he and Veronica kiss, and Archie leaves. And then we get to the ending here, which this ending is pretty fucking insane. Archie arrives at Pop's, and at first things are fine. Fred's just there to welcome him, and he goes in the bathroom to wash his hands, and he finds a masked man strangling Pop. Fred and Archie both attempt to intervene, and a gunshot is heard. We don't know what it's all about, but the masked man escaped Pops. Jughead says the event will start something new in Riverdale, which is a wave of darkness, and we see at the end that Archie actually holds Fred. He bleeds out on the floor, presumably dead. Fred actually was the one that was shot here, and that is the way the season comes to an end. Really good stuff overall, but let's just get into this episode and where I think we're going to go next season. So overall, guys, while this wasn't as big as a finale as I expected it to be, I still really did enjoy this episode, and honestly, I didn't expect a huge finale. I thought this was going to be more of an epilogue, and truth be told, that's what it was. But we have to talk about the cliffhanger, because that is insane. The way this episode did end is pretty crazy, the way things did wrap up there. First of all, what is the deal with this masked man? Why is he strangling Pop? What does he have against Fred? What is that really all about? I don't really know, but I'm guessing that's going to be our main crime headed next season. And they had to do something, obviously, because this is, in fact, a show that is supposed to be very much a neo-noir type show, and they had to have some sort of crime. So definitely, I understand why they decided to go in that direction. I think it makes a lot of sense for them to go in that direction for next season. If they kill Fred off, though, I think it is definitely going to be a huge loss to the show. Luke Perry's been so great as the character, and I don't really know where Hermione's arc is going to go. I guess she's going to be forced to deal with him in mourning. Does that mean that Archie's going to be an orphan? Is he going to go live with Jughead? Because, I mean, Mary is still out there, so I don't really know what's going to happen in terms of Archie's living situation if they do kill Fred, but I have a feeling he's not going to die. Like, he's going to be brutally hurt, but I don't know if Fred is actually going to die. We'll have to see what actually is going to happen there. I'd have to rewatch the scene to see where he actually was shot, because depending on that, I guess that will really mean if he does die or not. But this is a very interesting plot point. I like it it has nothing to do, as far as we know, with the Blossoms. I like it does not have to do with that. I think it should be something completely different, and I'm definitely interested in seeing really where that's going to go. But let's talk about Jughead, because probably the most shocking scene in this episode has to do with the Serpents. Not just the fact that they support Jughead, but that he actually seems willing to ally with them and actually possibly become a Serpent. And we know that's exactly not what Jughead needs to do, but in the situation that he's in, desperate times really call for desperate measures. So I can understand why Jughead does actually feel this is the best course of action to take. Is it the best course of action? I don't know. I don't think it's the best thing he could have done. I think there are definitely better options here that I don't think he's really thinking this through entirely. But I'm definitely interested in seeing really where this is going to go. If he actually does decide to join the Serpents, which really would not be a problem now because, again, they are on his side. And I guess because that he's not really as worried about it. And again, Betty seems very concerned. So I don't really know where the whole Serpent situation is going to go. I think that's going to be very interesting. But the thing I'm most interested in actually is Cheryl. I have no idea where Cheryl is going next season. Obviously, Thornhill's now destroyed, and she does want to move on with Penelope, so I don't really know what that entails, if that means them getting out of Riverdale and starting anew, or if it means her moving in possibly with the Coopers. I'm assuming that's where she's going to go. She's going to go move in with them because that is her actual family, but we'll have to see really what happens there. I'm interested in seeing really where Cheryl's going to go. I've loved her as a character. I've grown to love her as the season went on. I remember as in the beginning of the season, I really was not fond of her, but I've grown to like her as the season goes on. And yes, she can be annoying at points, but this was definitely one of her best episodes. And Madeline Pesh absolutely has killed it as this character all season, and I'm definitely very interested in seeing where they end up taking Cheryl throughout the rest of the show. I think that definitely is going to be very interesting. The other big question has to be what's going on in terms of what's going to happen with FP. Obviously, FP wants to remain in jail. Now that Jughead is supported by the Serpents, maybe FP has a better chance of getting out. Again, remember, he wants to fulfill his duty. He wants to make sure that Jughead is okay. Now that they have told him that you're going to be fine, I don't really think FP is a reason to stay in jail. I think this is kind of his ticket out of there, and I think that's going to be interesting. And if we go into next season with FP actually raising both Archie and Jughead, I think it actually might make a lot of sense. But again, I don't know if Fred's really going to die. I don't want to make any assumptions right now. Because the show hasn't done anything. We didn't actually see him die. We just saw him bleed out, and I'm going to go with the whole, if we didn't see him die, they're not actually dead, and we'll have to see really what's going to happen there. Overall, I thought this was a really well done finale. There were definitely a few things I thought that were a little bit strange, like the whole thing with that zombie in the water. What the fuck was that all about? Obviously, Cheryl was not crazy. She did see a zombie fight Jason, and I don't know if we're going to see something like that next season, but that's something going to be very interesting if we do have something tied with that. I don't know really if there's going to be something involving that, but we're also, I forgot to say, Betty's brother definitely is going to come into the picture at some point next season. I don't really know how she's going to get at that, if she's going to track down her brother, if it's going to be like a Polly situation, but where is her brother living? More importantly, who is her brother, and why have her parents kept this a secret from her all of these years, and what is he really up to this point? That's something I'm definitely very interested in getting into, and something tells me there's definitely a lot more to this story than we think there is. I think definitely what Alice said is true, but I think there is more to the story than we think, and I'm interested in getting into that whole thing. Overall, I definitely did enjoy this finale as a whole. I didn't think it was the best episode ever. Like I said, there were some scenes that I felt were just, it wasn't rushed necessarily, but there just were some things I think they could have maybe shed some more light on. Maybe some more Cheryl, a lot more Betty and Veronica. I definitely would have appreciated more of that. I loved their friendship all season. I think they definitely could have done more with them as characters, but I definitely did enjoy this finale overall, and I am going to give the finale of Riverdale, Season 1, Episode 13, Chapter 13, The Sweet Hereafter, a 4 out of 5 or a B+. And with that, guys, now let's get into the overall season, because what a surprise of a show this really was. I remember going into the show and being like, oh, this will be okay, but I'm probably going to give up on it after 5 episodes. I just didn't really know if the show is really going to work. I mean, Archie, modern day setting, just sounded kind of stupid. And truth be told, it really wasn't. I actually thought the show was a lot more intelligent than I expected to be. It was a hell of a lot more addicting than I really thought it was going to be. And the characters, surprisingly, were also a lot more complex than I expected them to be going in. I really expected them to be very basic, and some of them were. Like, Archie as a character, really, you can't get more basic than that. I just found him to be very basic of a character, and I don't really know where he's going to go moving forward. I mean, maybe what's happened with his father is going to make him more interesting of a character, but we'll have to see really what happens there. My main complaints with this season are mainly that there was definitely a huge shift in tone. I think definitely sometimes the show didn't really know what to do with certain characters, specifically Josie. I don't really know why Josie was a main character this season. Sure, she had things to do, but not enough for me to really consider her a main character. I really felt the show just had her on the show truthfully because Josie and the Pussycats. It didn't really seem like they needed her on this season because she didn't really have much of a plot. Yes, her mother is the mayor, but other than that, they didn't really do much with Josie as a character overall, and I'm hoping that does change next season because she is a very good actress. We've gotten some good stuff with her, but they never really knew how to fully incorporate her into the season. I think that definitely was a disservice to the show. They could have done a little bit more with her, and I wasn't as impressed with the way things turned out there. And as far as these relationships, as much as I do like Jughead and Betty and Archie and Veronica, I do feel both these relationships were kind of forced, especially of Archie and Veronica. I feel that one definitely felt a little bit more naturalistic, but it did kind of make me feel like Archie's whole relationship with Valerie was kind of pointless in the end. I don't really know why we had that going on. I get it that obviously Archie is kind of dumb and he doesn't really know how to handle things, and I don't really know if his relation with Veronica is going to go that great, honestly, because of how Archie has handled relationships in the past. We know he's definitely not the best at it. And then Betty and Jughead, I definitely did feel was a bit forced at first, but I definitely did come to love them as the season went on. I think they definitely do support each other very well. You can get why they really do care about each other, but it has to be said, both these relationships are definitely very rushed, and I don't think Betty and Jughead are really in a place yet where they can say I love you to each other. I mean, I get it, obviously, they've been dating for a little while, but it hasn't, they've acted like they've been dating for months when they've really only dated for like 3 or 4 episodes. So I don't really know where we're gonna go. That I did like what we got of Archie and Jughead. I mean, I've Jughead and Betty. I thought that was definitely very well done. I do feel the show is not focused on the friendships enough. You know, Archie and Jughead and Betty and Veronica. Those were very solid friendships, and I hope the show is focused more on that because they didn't focus on as much as I wanted them to. But I did love the way they incorporated the parents into the story. What they did with Hermione. What they did with Alice, just really compelling characters overall, and the stories in general, I definitely really did love seeing. At the end of the day, I definitely am going to, I definitely did enjoy the season as a whole. It was a hell of a lot better than I thought it was going to be, and I'm definitely going to give the season of Riverdale a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. I was overall very impressed with the way the season turned out. Sure, it had its cheesy moments. Sure, sometimes it didn't exactly make a lot of sense, but it was definitely a very compelling mystery. It had a lot better characters than I thought it was going to, and especially working in a modern day setting. When I first heard of this idea, it made a lot more sense to put this in a natural modern day setting than you really think it could have. And sure, maybe it's not exactly like the Archie comics, but it really does work as its own thing. And when it really does come down to it, I'm very excited to see where the second season does take us, because there still are a lot more stories for these characters to go. This was a very well done setup, a lot better than it really could have been, and it definitely makes me very interested to see where the show is really going to go from here. But overall, guys, that's it. Riverdale Season 1 has come to an end. I can't believe the season is actually over. It seems that just a few weeks ago, which was really a few months ago, I was just talking to you about the first episode of the show and how surprised I really was by it. But I definitely was very impressed with the way the show turned out. Let me know what you guys thought of this finale. Loved your thoughts on it. Where do you think the cliffhanger is going to go? Where's Season 2 really going to take us? I'm definitely interested in seeing where we end up going next season. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching all my Riverdale reviews. I know I did fall off a couple times, but thank you for watching them throughout this entire season. Love hearing your commentary and things like that. Definitely very appreciated. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next video, which I think will be for a movie review. Don't quote me on that, but I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.